I had to
Alright,
drop the
let's
bitrate a
see.
bit, so hopefully that helps a little. Alright, this time we should be live. Hopefully, for good.
Right.
Yeah, there it goes. Little thing just went.
All
Yep, there
right,
you
I
go.
see it.
Woohoo!
Yep.
Awesome.
All shiny and nice.
All shiny and nice. I love the text at the bottom.
Well, yeah, I had to set that up so that way people can see. It's Alright, shoot. Only there's a way.
Yeah, that actually works pretty well. We gotta keep that going for the rest of our shows.
Yeah.
Oh, bother. Hold on.
Ramsey's. Okay, so we're live.
So we are live, ladies and gentlemen, with the creator of Vidar. Vidar. I was gonna say Vidar. Dean. He's the creator of Vidar. Can you tell us a little bit about this game before we start?
Sure. So the game is right now it's on Kickstarter. So what you guys are playing is like the little demo that we've been showing at a few of the indie showcases. It is the game is focused on a town that has 24 different people, and every night a random one of them is killed by a beast. And these NPCs, these 24 villagers, have their own lives, their own quests to give you, their own relationships with each other. And so when one person dies, it throws everybody else's stories in a bunch of different directions. And because the order of deaths is random in the game, the story that gets told is actually different every time you play the game, based not just on kind of what the player does, but also on what the order is of deaths. So, you know, if a mother loses her son versus her husband versus a sister versus she predeceases all of them, the game changes. Like what she needs changes. So in order to stop the beast, you have to go into like environmental dungeon puzzle. I've kind of been recently referring to it as Zelda minus the combat. Since it kind of gets the point across. The idea is to get from point A to point B in the dungeon, and it's timed, and you have a limited amount of time to make it to the end to stop the beast. And those puzzles are also all randomized in the game. So in the demo, you'll get to see basically one day, which is as much free time as you want in town, and then you go into the cave. You get to see some of the puzzles. Normally, at the end of the time limit, you'd be teleported back to town. But it just kind of ends the demo. For the purpose of the demo, we also just kill 3 random people right off the top. So that way, if it's going to change. Like the demo itself will change. You can play it through a few times, and you'll see how those things impact the game.
That's
That's very fascinating there, Dean. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well? You know, just give you a little bit of background if you don't mind as well.
Yeah, so I've been working on Vidar is like my first kind of commercial big project. I've done a lot of hobby game design for quite a while, but actually, I'm a lawyer by trade, so this is kind of a different path for me. But I've been actually getting more involved in the indie scene in New York. There's a great group here called Playcrafting, which helps support independent game developers. I'm actually teaching now a few classes for them this coming spring. So, this is kind of the big first project for me, but I'm really excited about it. I am in New York. I guess that was apparent from my reference earlier, but I've been in New York for about 5 years. I'm originally from DC, and I'm excited for this.
Maybe there was a chance we could escape.
I just came back from DC.
But the storm was too
That's
strong.
right, you were down there for a con,
The
right?
snow was too deep.
Yeah, I was just down there for Katsucon.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of
stranger was not the
fun,
savior of
despite
the
some
dawn.
people trying to cause drama for me, which I hate people who want to start crap. And unfortunately, I had to deal with a couple different people who wanted to start crap and someone who stole my pocket knife because people can be jerks.
Oh my god.
That being said, the con was actually a lot of fun, and I don't hold any of that against the con. It wasn't the con's fault.
Well, that's
And
good.
The city itself is kind of cool, but every time I'm there, I just want to play Fallout 3. It's like, there's the Washington Monument. Yeah, there should be a little radio tower thing on top of that. There's the Lincoln Memorial. But there's the Jefferson Memorial. Yeah, that cleans the water. how do you know this place just from a game? I'm like, eh.
It makes you feel any better, Jared? I'm pretty sure if I go to Japan, I'll be like the same way. I'll be like, oh, I know this from an anime.
Yeah. Well, one of the funnier stories a friend of mine has, a former friend, I don't know, she ceased talking to me a while ago, but her boyfriend, before he moved to Boston, played Assassin's Creed 3, and then when he moved to Boston, he's like, wait, that's real? a lot of the landmarks in the game, he's like, that's real?
It's actually a thing.
Yes, that's real. Yes, and the American Revolution happened too. Actually, that totally happened.
Sure, if you want to.
Every so often, it's nice to find, like, you know, like on vacation or something like that, to go see, like, sightseeing and see something that was in Civ as like a world wonder or a landmark or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, that name sounds really familiar. I think it's from Civ 5.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't go to India and Gandhi didn't nuke me, so that's a good thing.
So, just to kind of talk a little bit about what's happening in the game right now, there were 3 people that were announced at the top of the demo who died. I think I saw that Attell was dead, and maybe a few. I don't remember who the other 2 were. But
I wasn't reading the screen either. I feel really bad.
Huh?
I wasn't reading the screen either because I was.
No worries. So, but who dies like changes kind of what's happening. So you just got a quest from the alchemist who is asking you to do something that Attell would have just been able to do like when he was alive. And so that quest wouldn't have been available to you if Attell was alive. It also wouldn't be available to you if Dorothea the blacksmith was dead, because the quest that he's given you, which is to go get oil for the streetlights, he wouldn't need that if nobody was around to repair the streetlights. So it's kind of a balance, you know, and all the quests in the game require certain people to be alive and certain people to be dead, and sometimes it's also paced by days, so that way you get to see different quests depending on what's going on in the game. We're starting to map all of that out like publicly. We about 2 or 3 weeks ago partnered with Curse. They run Gamepedia, and they're hosting the official Vidar wiki. Actually, I'll post a link to it. And so what we're starting to do now is like go over some of the quests that aren't in the demo to give people more of a flavor of seeing what those kinds of conditions might be to trigger certain either quests or events in town or something like that.
What I find interesting is that this house here that Miguel's kind of wandering around wasn't in the Boston Fig build at all. So it's kind of cool just to see that. I mean, the building itself was, but being able to enter it was not available yet. So it's kind of interesting to see those little changes.
Yeah, I expanded it a little bit, you know, primarily for MagFest, and also because like I felt like the characters that are in right now kind of tell a cohesive or comprehensive story. So, you know, worst case scenario, like if we couldn't get more characters in or something like that, then at least they do the job, like for the demo, right? Whereas for the Boston Fig demo, I felt like some things were a little bit left out or unresolved, and some of the plots didn't necessarily make the most sense.
Mm-hmm. Although I was still like getting wine for the priest when what's her face dies.
I'm sorry?
I believe it was the priest has to get the wine quest if I think one of the certain characters dead. And I'm like, I did kind of dig that, just the whole like, yeah, my faith's wavering, and just give me some booze. I just need to. And I'm like, you know what? If I was in a town where this could be my last night because a monster is going to kill me, if I made my request to the stranger as well. If you find booze, we'll just go into that cave.
We'll just We'll just have like a little last hurrah. Yeah, his. I'm actually really excited about his character because he has like some strong, different endings, I guess, for his assuming he like survives for most of the game. And when I say different endings, I don't mean like the end of the game, but like where his plot kind of gets to. And you know, he can definitely get to a point where he just totally abandons his faith, he can get to a point where he really re-embraces it. He there's one town event, so the nun is kind of a stick in the mud. She's very she condemns like most of the people in town. She's not really particularly welcoming. And the church, which is in the game but not in the demo, she won't really welcome a lot of people there. But once she dies, the priest can start to like welcome people into this building that's actually quite strong. And so ultimately, some of the anybody who gets into the church is protected from dying that night until everybody outside of the church is dead. So it's a way of the player, if they convince people to move into the church, of basically picking favorites, so that you can force certain quests that you want to see evolve.
Also, it's interesting morality things of what do you, not even morality, ethical thing of who do you think is more useful to keep around in the town as well. It's like the blacksmith might be really helpful to have around, or saving like this family here in this house.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the main focus of the Boston Fig demo was this house here, because depending on almost every scenario had at least one member of the family dead.
Yeah.
Really some characters. So.
This is this house is, I mean, it mostly because like Sander, who's the clockmaker over to the left, has a quest that will always trigger so long as he's alive for the purpose of the demo. He still is a big part of the demo. His quest is the only one in the full game that you're always going to get. And that's because, I was talking to, it serves as kind of your motivation to originally go into the cave. And from Boston Fig, from MagFest, from a few other events in New York, people have kind of had the reaction of, why is this like guy telling me to go save his son? Like, why isn't he doing it? Like, man up and go take care of your kid. And I mean, it's a fair point, right? Like it's maybe not a criticism that we would have lobbed against RPGs back in like the SNES era when NPCs just walked around town to, give you a quest, but it's a fair point now. And so he will actually join you at the beginning of the full game, and I've been actually streaming some of the development of that cutscene like a week or two ago to kind of show off how that's all playing out in the full game, and how you accompany him to try and find his son and things like that. So the rest of the game still plays out as anticipated, but at least in that sense, it's designed to make it more believable.
The interesting thing is, I'm such a D&D player that it never bothered me, because in D&D, like, every other person will give, because that's the whole point of the DM is to get you into the cave, into the
exactly
orc fort or whatever. So some guy will be like, "Oh, they kidnapped my wife," and it's like, well, why aren't you leading like the town with pitchforks at these guys?
Right.
Like,
I think
you never
really
think that.
with
You're just like, oh my gosh, this guy, I need to rescue this guy's wife or kid or whatever, and he's gonna pay me gold. Sweet, I'm in. Let's do this.
Yeah,
If you're playing a paladin or a cleric, in which you say, "Oh, no gold would be necessary." Because I was either a mage or a cleric, so you'd either have to always turn down the reward, which would piss off everyone else in my group,
or always demand one.
Or always demand one, yeah. It was nice when I played with paladins, because there'd be two of us doing the whole like, no, better for you to give that money to the church or the poor than to me. It's like, well, everyone else might be like, or we could buy new weapons. It's like, well,
right,
or we
could keep it for ourselves. Like, maybe a wait outside.
Yeah. Well, we'll find swag in the cave. Don't worry about it, guys. This poor blacksmith shouldn't give us his life savings.
I don't know about that. This seems pretty risky.
So one of the stuff I'm noticing as I'm playing, Dean, is all the I guess what you call the backstory on the area from the books, right?
Yeah, so these books are actually part of a quest that's not in the demo, but ultimately do become important. As you're kind of so the whole backstory behind this town is that it used to be the capital of an ancient kingdom, and so the further you go down in the cave, the more ruins you start to find, the more like that old world you actually come across. including like this library, this ruined library. And these books that are up here are actually part of a quest that or puzzle really that's in that library. So you'll be able to come up and grab these books and bring them down and things like that. So they're not relevant now except for backstory, but I included them because there are some people at demos that really just enjoy reading like all of the lore and want to talk to every NPC and want to just poke around everything in town. And so I wanted to give them a little bit more reward for that effort. So I included those books.
Well, it's the one thing of like going from the Boston Fig demo where I just remember clicking on everything. I'm like, come on, some sort of, even like this book doesn't have text yet, like box. Come on.
Yeah.
This like, oh good, you can click on everything and get all your little flavor text. Awesome.
It's and it's funny. So like all those things where like you can interact now have little hover arrows as you get next to them, and that was kind of like it took a while to understand that that's what needed to happen. Originally, when people were playing this game, it's funny. The Savage Helios in chat said that the game reminds him of Final Fantasy VI. I actually blame that game for kind of conditioning us to check every tile in a wall that looks like this. Like you're just going to go up to every bookcase, everything, because there might be an elixir in that grandfather clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any of it originally for the first time that I ever demoed the game, and people were really checking for all those things. So I felt bad. So for Boston Fig, I put in like 3 or 4, just like little flavor text or whatever for people to see. And that was like the worst response, because then people were basically like they were rewarded for checking things. So now they really thought that there was other hidden stuff. And so where they would have just spent 1 minute or 2 minutes checking, they were now spending 10 minutes checking for stuff that wasn't there.
So I fell into that trap. So
yeah. I mean, and it takes seeing people play your game to really get that, to understand that that's going to be the response. So the compromise then, and I think not compromise, the best design solution so far was putting those hover arrows, and it really conditions the player to look for those arrows and not check anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So this room was not actually in the Boston Fig demo. I think this was added later. And this is the quest that the alchemist gave you, which is to go clear out these imps, and then once they're gone, they leave behind like an oily residue, so he wants you to get that. And you do that by lighting 5 torches that are in this room. So this is, it's part of the ice environment in the game, and all of them have at their core this frictionless ice where you slide until you hit something, and then you turn and you slide. But the catch with this one is that these imps will knock you backwards, and so it becomes more of a timing puzzle than a logic puzzle. Like the actual logic behind them, the puzzles isn't too difficult, but the timing can be occasionally frustrating.
Yeah. It's a cool little maze. I like it. No, video, don't freeze on me. I want to see more. Yeah, I can see more now. Yeah, and a little level memorization never really hurts either. And so notice as Miguel's like, oops, messed up that time. I don't know what I'm doing.
So how influential are people like giving you when they give you feedback? How influential are they in giving in the actual final product of the game?
Yeah, so I mean, some people don't hold back. Like they will just tell you exactly what they think. Generally, the better feedback that I get is like, I try not to hover, but I hover.
I don't think that can be helped. I mean, it is your project,
and watching over people's shoulders, watching them play. That Yeah, like it's my baby, right? Like there's no avoiding it. But it's and when I see people interacting with the game, I'm able to instantly pick up like, oh, I know what they're expecting to happen there, and it's not happening, and is that something I want to address, or is that something that I can add a tutorial on, or whatever. And the that to that end, things like Boston Sig or Magfest or Playcrafting or Sheep's Meow up here are just so invaluable. Like you don't normally get that opportunity to watch how people interact with your game on like that many people, hundreds of people, at such an early stage. So it's been great to get that kind of feedback. And then additionally, people. One of the interesting questions that I occasionally get is, "Oh man, this game must have just like a ton of different endings, right?" And the first time I got that question, it kind of took me aback because I was like, "There's only like two. Like you either beat the beast or you don't." And it's really about the journey. It's about like the stories that these people tell, and how the NPCs interact with each other. And how that changes every time. But it definitely got me down this, especially at like when I heard the questions at MagFest, kind of got me thinking, all right, maybe we do like need to do some more alternate ending kind of stuff because it's something that people certainly expect.
Well, the interesting thing with that is you can do the. I played games where, depending on what side quests and what have you do, or in games where you can save people, the ending for the hero or whatever, or is a basic good or bad or neutral ending. But then you get the subsequent kind of things that are like, oh, because you rescued Jeffrey, this and this happened.
These other things happen, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to see if that's something that can happen with Vidar. I feel like we keep ending up back here.
Yeah, I just had that aha moment where it's like, oh, wait, I need to take a different path now.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm definitely, toying with to see whether or not I want to go down that road. But for right now, it's more focused on the core gameplay. Endings are easy. Like,
yeah, it's mostly going to be text boxes or what have you.
Jeez. I thought I had that timing right. Oh well.
So, what other games were you influenced other than the obvious Final Fantasy VI?
Yeah,
to make this game.
Certainly, like artistically, all of those like SNES golden era RPGs, right? Like Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the style. We're seeing a lot of like resurgence of pixel art, and it's almost like now becoming too big of a genre just to call something pixel art. You now kind of have to say like, what reference for pixel art, and so it's definitely that era of SNES pixel art for the game. But in terms of the gameplay, I really love games where you have this core mechanic of populating a town. It's something that like has always gotten to me. I mean, even like I'm still playing Animal Crossing. Like this is I have to like come home from work and like check in on my animals. And
I don't know if you've been hearing the podcast, but I've been playing that game a lot too. So don't blame me one bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a total sucker for that, and I like seeing a town grow. I'm also playing right now Dragon Age Inquisition, and it has a very similar mechanic of like growing your keep, and so I like that mechanic and wanted to see what happens if you turn it on its head, basically. So I took, I was like, what happens if we have a town that has everyone there and then they're slowly dying off? And so I pulled a lot of inspiration from those games as well. I have been replaying a lot of Zelda, which I know that you were doing as well. We finished we're almost finished with Link to the Past. We're also working on Majora's Mask, but we don't have a 3DS, so we're working on like the N64 Majora's Mask. We also finished Wind Waker recently, and going into those games with having now spent over a year on Vidar, it's like I'm sitting there analyzing these dungeons. Like how has Zelda become the pinnacle of environmental dungeons. And it's a really fascinating study. So I'm taking every lesson that I can from those games.
Well, I already beat one part of this of the demo, so I guess it's a
Sweet.
Kickstarter update now. I guess we're at this
Yeah,
right
for
now.
the demo,
Good.
it'll, and the demo is also available for people who are watching. The demo is available on the Kickstarter page. You can download it, you can play it, you can check it out. It's going to be different. It's always going to be different. But one thing that might be worth showing off is one of the town events, which you can, in the demo, you can just force it to trigger, just because it has like a 1 in several hundred chance of happening. Otherwise,
Actually, it happened to me the first time I booted it up.
you're kidding.
Yeah, yeah. The first time I booted it up to play it, boom, that event was going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it does happen. It happened maybe like 3 or 4 times at MagFest, but out of like several hundred people playing it, and every time it happens, I get really excited because it's something a little bit different. It's an example of the town events in Vidar. So if the right things start to happen, then the whole town is impacted. For these purposes, it's if the right 3 people die at the top of your demo, then nobody's around to see and to check a leaky streetlight, and it catches that extra house that was added on fire. So it totally, changes the game. This girl is now in trouble, and you have to save her.
But the storm was too strong, and the snow was too deep. The stranger was not the savior of Vidar.
Yeah, so you're going to see that these are the 3 people that have died, and we forced them to for the purposes of the demo, just to give you a flavor of it. And that's something you can set in the options menu, whether on the demo, whether or not you want it to be the randomized normal demo or this. And it'll kind of give you a quick explanation as to what's happened here. And so now the demo is totally different, right? Like before we started, and it was all, snowy and fine. And now there's a house on fire. So you're not going to end up going into the cave at all during the demo. Instead, you're just going to, you're going to have a totally different quest.
It's like a little character sprites are jumping around or running around and what have you, freaking out. Oh my god, fire!
Now, question. Since everything's randomized in terms of events, will the overall game, like for example, if something one thing happens, will you not be able to have access to a certain thing later on?
Absolutely, yeah. It's intentional. Most of the quests have something that they make not available. So most of the stuff is mutually exclusive. Like you can only get, I'm targeting right now around 2 events per game, but of course since it's random, I'm sure that there's going to be a possible scenario where you get no events, and there's going to be a possible scenario where you get like 5. But the target is kind of to hit 2 of these events. One of the things, for example, is behind this house that's burning down, is a waypoint that if you do a quest, will allow you to just jump ahead in the cave, jump several puzzles. Once the house is burned down, you can't get past the ruins of it, and you'll never be able to access that waypoint. So it definitely impacts the game.
Yeah, because it seems like that, with that kind of randomization, it's gonna get to a point where it's like, oh, I won't have access to this, and this while I'm playing. So it's like, so maybe my experience might be a little bit more gimped than usual.
Yeah,
So
and so
it's like one.
yeah, so the idea is basically that like everything in the game is gimping your experience.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I was going to say the perfect example is whenever I flip on Binding of Isaac, it's like since that game's so randomized, it's like, okay, I can have this in one run, but I won't have this. I won't have that same item or that same effect the next time I play it. So it's like I'm wondering that if it's gonna be like the same thing here, where it's like, oh, I don't have access to this while I'm playing in this run now.
Yeah, so there's, certainly some of like the bigger items, I guess, like the clock. Like you throughout the demo, you've been able to see your time, like how much time you have left. You don't start with that in the game. You actually have to do a quest to get that. And it's possible for the person who gives it to you to die. So there are a few different ways where you can get the clock. And we've made it intentionally easy for you, like, to get it, because it's pretty important. It helps in terms of gameplay. But it's still, I want it to be possible for you not to get it. Things like quest journal or a mini map or sprint shoes or all of these different kinds of niceties, I guess, are all quest rewards, and the people who give them out can die, or something can happen such that you don't get that quest because of the state of the game, the state of the town. So it's absolutely possible to lose out on some of those tools.
So you ever considered like what?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever considered like adding like a hard mode or something like that, where it's just like we're gonna totally take away everything?
In terms of like taking away the tools and stuff, that's an interesting idea. For a hard mode, I was kind of considering doing like harder puzzles to see how that played out. It's what I've noticed is there are some people who really like the idea of the game, but could be given an hour and would not solve some of the puzzles. And there are some people who really like the idea of the game and also can get through the demo with like 5 of their 7 minutes remaining, kind of thing. And it's difficult, and really, like, those are the two kinds of people that I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot more of those two buckets than I am of somebody who's taking the right amount of time to finish the puzzle, like get it that this is balanced order, So what I'm thinking may have to happen is something like a harder puzzle mode or easy puzzles or something like that to help people who want to still see the story, but like will never solve a frictionless ice puzzle, no matter how long it takes.
Somebody knows and complains about it every time a Pokemon game comes out. Oh man, I finally got the ice level. I'm done.
Exactly.
And I'm like,
it's always before the legendary. Also, that's the worst part.
And yeah, I mean, there's some people who like. There are actually a lot of people who will see the demo at an event and be like, "Oh, ice puzzles! I can't do these."
It's the same thing. Like people complain about ice dungeons and not ice dungeons, but like water dungeons in like Zelda games and stuff like that. So
dungeons.
See, there you go. So it's like no two people are like I didn't mind the water dungeon in Ocarina of Time, but Jared, I'm pretty sure you have nightmares of it.
Well,
so it's like
trying to run back and forth to fill up the water. Now lower the water. Now raise the water. Now lower the water. And I've had to deal with that in several Zelda games over the years.
Water
and it's just one of those, like, every time that dungeon comes up, I know it's coming up, and I go, okay, let's raise the water. Raise the water.
What I will say, I mean, here's the nice thing about being indie, right? Is I don't have to, and I'm not trying to make this game for everyone. Zelda does not have that luxury. Their budget is too big for them to like leave people on the table, right? But when you're indie, it's you hope to find a community. You hope that there's people that like your game, and really the goal is just to find the people in this world that this resonates with. So
yeah, it's one of those strange things where you really you really have to kind of know who your audience is and try to make them as happy as you can.
The day the stranger came to Vidar,
Yeah, absolutely.
everyone was excited. If he could find a way through the blizzard, maybe.
Which is not the easiest thing in the world to do,
The
but
storm was too strong.
I definitely have all the various projects. I mean, someone obviously has caught my eye. I've been talking about it for quite a while now.
Yeah, so have I. My friends are ready to kill me.
I ended up showing this to showing it to some of my friends, one of the earlier builds, and my friend was very much in the category of like, "Oh, this is awesome! I never even thought about doing a game like this style." I go, "Yeah, I agree. It was a kind of an idea you don't really expect to run into."
Yeah, I mean it's fun to try and do something different and to ultimately make the game that I want to play, right? That it's something that I've always wanted to see in games which talk about evolving stories or living worlds or emerging narratives, whatever the buzzword is that they use. The problem that I've always had with it is, yeah, but your NPCs don't know what's going on, and they're the ones who are supposed to live in it. So, I wanted to make a game that really had the NPCs aware of their surroundings, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I mean, to go with how it is the Majora's Mask has that type of deal too with all the townsfolks that you deal with. If you don't do a certain event, you can't unlock their certain part of their event in the game, and that kind of deal. Or if you don't do this, if you don't meet up with this person, you don't get the item that you need to initiate the next quest.
Yeah, I've really been focusing on how Majora's Mask is doing this, and approaching kind of the closing off like certain windows and stuff. I mean, ultimately, Majora's Mask, all you have to do is reset.
Yeah.
So, Savage Helios. It's probably going to be roughly a game. The game is going to be about 4 hours long. It's intentionally on the shorter sides because I think what ends up happening with developers who want to give you different options is that they say, "Oh, but I've created all this content and I want my player to see it. So let me actually make the options not that meaningful so that you can see all of the content in one playthrough." It's not the case with Vidar. There's just no way, and the game is intentionally designed for it to take you 3, maybe 4 playthroughs to see a majority of the content. And there'll always be that like one kind of nagging thing that you were never really able to see just because the order never worked out quite right for you. To kind of make up for that, the game is a little bit shorter. My guess is if you're somebody who doesn't really talk to a lot of NPCs, it can go as fast as 2.5, 3 hours. If you're somebody that reads every single flavor text, it can go up to 5.
The Jared players.
I like to
Actually,
sorry?
I take it back. I have a friend who's even more crazy than me because I have a friend who's read a lot of the books in the Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah, that's
It's
dedication.
Like, it's hilarious. I was reading through some of these books and about this legend about this one god who did this and this. I'm like, you read those? He's like, yes.
Yeah,
great.
Like,
Hey,
I
why
tend
aren't
to
you
read
reading
like a
these?
lot
Like,
of stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly, Savage Helios. It's, the idea is that you really want to come back and replay it to see a different story. Somebody's going to die the first night, within the first game that you play. There's just going to be somebody, like, it's part of the game. And so one of the 24 characters, you won't get to see any quests that they offer you. You won't get to see any of their story. You won't get any of their rewards, which will change how you actually interact with the game too. So because of that, you're just going to miss out on that, and you're going to have to come back. What I'm working on, I'm going to include something like a new game plus, which will allow you a little bit more control the second time around over who dies and who doesn't, just so that if I don't want you to be in a situation where like the same person dies the first night again.
Now, Dean, when I talked to Bernadette, she gave me the blessing of the gods that lasts a day. If you can go into it, what specifically would that be? for like going into
Yeah,
the cave
so
and questing?
So she has a quest where she asks you to return. In the full game, it's 5 ghosts to their graves. In the demo, you do one of them, and those ghosts are there. Their graves are scattered throughout. They're randomly spawned. Both the ghosts and their graves are placed in random locations throughout the cave. But they're also there to give you a little bit of history or backstory on Vidar. It's like your first intro to the old history, and they talk at you while you're leading them to their graves. The problem is you can't talk to them unless Bernadette has given you that blessing, and it only works once a day. So she needs to be alive tomorrow to give it to you. And so if you haven't done the quest by the time the day is over, you better hope that she's still alive so you can finish it the next day. And so that's kind of how that works. One of the mechanics of the game that I talked about in a recent Kickstarter update is inheritance. It's possible for certain people to inherit roles or quests from others, and so it's possible for the priest to inherit from Bernadette the nun this quest, and he can ultimately give you the blessing too in certain circumstances. So it's possible to still do the quest even if she dies, but it's rare circumstances.
But I would also assume that, like, for example, if like Bernadette does die, and the person that does give it to you does give you the blessing, I'm pretty sure it's not like, since she's a nun, she's like the official blessing here. It's like random dude just gives it to you. It's like I don't know if this is a blessing or not.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure that
like I'm like 60-40 on this one. I'm 60-40 on this one. I'm still getting bad luck here, but I don't know.
So yeah, I mean it's I'm trying to keep it more a little bit more reasonable than that. But yeah, we can just have everybody in town blessing everybody. Why not?
Everyone's a holy. Here we go.
Right.
Wow.
So this is again so you're seeing a lot of the ice bubbles because that's what I have art done for. That's why we're doing the Kickstarter. So we need to get the rest of the art assets. So that's why all of the demo puzzles are focused on this frictionless ice mechanic. They're all from the same environment in the cave. This is another, again, the core mechanic is sliding, but it's completely upended by the fact that you have to switch between the two characters. So if you press, I guess if you're using a controller, it's Y, you're able to switch back and forth between the main character, the stranger, and this kid who you're trying to get out. And using these levers, the one character can actually rotate the arrows that are up here, and those force the other character in different directions. So it's kind of, you have to set the puzzle state correctly and then have him go through it. So it becomes a much more challenging task that way. It's also possible, so the puzzles, I should say, are also randomized. So the location of the arrows is different every time. The location of the rocks is different. And sometimes this quest doesn't even involve arrows, but instead involves the levers will open and close doors instead. And those doors will either block the kid, or let the kid pass. And so you have to figure out whether they should be open or closed. And all of that's to make sure that if you do end up with the exact same quest in a second playthrough, you're not like, I remember this one, I got this in 2 seconds. I already solved this puzzle. This is super easy.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want it to be like, super easy the second time around, and I still wanted it to be a challenge. So that's kind of the way that I'm handling that.
I like that. I really think that's it's just one of those little things where, I've played enough games that have puzzles and things like that in them where, on a second or third playthrough, I'm like, yeah, I just do this and this and this, done.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have a really good memory for it, then it it kind of takes away from the game. So yeah.
So other than the ice levels and the fire puzzle, what other puzzles can we expect from the full game?
Yeah, so there are 4 main environments in the cave. The next one after the ice one is a dark cave area. It's a very creative name: Ice Cave, Dark Cave. And the dark area is focused on you have a lantern, and it has oil levels, and so the light around you is slowly closing. And so you'll need to constantly be refueling it in order to see the entire puzzle. It's focused on things like lighting all the torches in time, finding invisible platforms, mirror reflecting light puzzles, all that kind of stuff. There's also a side area there that deals with, there's one mechanic are these wolves that will slowly approach you, and if they get you, send you back to the beginning. Dealing with the wolves is part of that. There's a music puzzle that's in there as well. And it's also where that library is that I mentioned earlier. The next area is, I hate to say it, Jared, but it's a water temple. It's all about controlling water levels and figuring out where to push blocks so that they float or that they sink, to allow you to cross over areas. There's also kind of a Rube Goldberg machine puzzle that covers that entire area, which is pretty fun. And then the last area is focused on the classic mechanic of block pushing, figuring out where the boulders go, and there's certain places where you can push them onto geysers and lift them up and things like that. So each area is focused on one of these core mechanics, but then the puzzles have different twists to them. So this whole area is focused on frictionless ice, but all the puzzles have spins. And that's the case for all of the rest of them going forward.
Okay.
Sweet, we're getting the hell out of here. And so the fire one that you saw is more emblematic of just a one-off. There's no other fire puzzles or anything like that. Although I will say that maze is also random, so that way, just in case you see it again, it's gonna be different, the actual pathing through it. But there are several other town events that have these little mini puzzles and that kind of stuff. I think if you take care of the kid, he should be able to flip that arrow for you.
Yep.
It's kind of cool looking over the chat here.
Yeah, I'm sorry for lack of activity, but I've been putting out feelers out there, but no bites just yet.
I don't know. It's fun just to watch people play the game.
Yeah, that's chill.
Savage Helios, I had to have a water level. Of course I had to have a water level.
See, when it gets water level.
That's my. I actually really enjoyed those puzzles. And it's something I had worked on in a previous game. I kind of wanted to figure out how to correctly do those puzzles, and so now that I've built that whole engine and mechanic for it in RPG Maker already, I wanted to copy paste. So with the obvious difference of now doing it randomly, which makes things a little bit crazier.
It would, just the sheer amount of setups and options is just going to take forever to go through everything. Even as a writer, just going over, they go oh man, just writing this character story. Oh wait, but if this person dies, then I have to add in this aspect. If this person dies, I have to add in this aspect, and you got to do it for every single person, and just.
Yeah, so it's
wow, that was
you get to know
unexpected.
characters better than other characters, I guess. I really know Sander right now. I really know Borballo right now. I have Danny. I have their voices down. I know exactly how to write for them, and most of their dialogue is really already done. There are a lot of characters where the dialogue is finished, but I'm not as or close to finished, but I'm not as comfortable with them. And there's some characters that I haven't written. There's 3 or 4 that I don't know them yet well enough. I've written their character, but we haven't lived long enough together for me to really write.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I'll have to start to get into their minds a little bit.
Yeah, it's just gotta be one of those things where, when you're at it, each character as you go through them, you just get to know them better and better. I mean, it's just like writing a book. I'm sitting there when I initially write, I'm like, okay, well, this person's basically this type of personality, and this person's this type of personality. When you finally write them and have them interact with each other and have them interact with the world, you realize, well, it's more than that initial one line I wrote describing the character in my notes. And I assume it's the same thing here, where it's like, oh, this person is the clockmaker, the blacksmith, the alchemist, whatever. But then when you have to start writing the dialogue and everything, you're like, well, they're also worried about this stuff, or have this phobia, or are friends with this person but not friends with this other person.
Exactly, and actually, it's been interesting to find where the relationships are in town too. Like even once I set up those stories to see. Okay, actually, like some of them I knew, like some of them I've intentionally forced these people to be friends, but some of them I'm like, actually, this person would just be besties with this other person, and that's not something I had considered. But now that now that I know them, they should probably have a few scenes together or have some reactions and some quests together. And so those areas I still find those and decide to kind of go back in and add them. It's quite easy to go back in and add more content. It's something that this game cannot have enough of. So
yeah, it's definitely one of those things I really did like with when with the priest in the original demo, how he would react based on whether or not the nun had died. Or how the family reacts when one of their kids dies, or the kid in the cave quest and what have you. It's little things like that that really kind of make the character seem more alive. Because when you play through your regular kind of I want to say like your regular RPG, the people in those towns, I'd say with the exception of say like a Elder Scrolls game or something. The people in most of those towns, and any of your standard, JRPG style games, that's probably the better way to put it, don't seem to be anything more than the person who stands by this house and gives you X amount of information.
Right.
The town doesn't seem like a real livable town, especially when you start adding up how many people are in the town versus how many houses are in the town.
Yeah, that's also true. There's like always way more houses.
Yeah. Also, noticing this playthrough that I'm doing, there's actually some people by the grave sites too, which is pretty awesome. So they're actually showing their grief for certain people.
Yeah, and they, so one of the systems that I kind of had to build in, really it happened after Boston Big, was keeping track of where I wanted people to be and when. So these characters will only really mourn for a day. Or if it's somebody that like they've lost, that's super close to them, they might visit the grave for like 2 days or 3 days. And so these relationships ultimately are weighted. So there's one character who's not in the demo right now, but she's a mother and she's like very stereotypical, like motherly instinct, I guess, and she represents like a lot of that power. And if her son dies, like that's pretty much like the final blow for her. And she, can be found mourning at the grave pretty much every day for the rest of the game. Whereas if it's, the priest or somebody, she's like, yeah, I was religious and yeah, I miss him, but like she's not going to stay out there all the time.
Which makes sense. I mean, there's just certain people you're closer with than other people.
Right. And so what happens is like these relationships ultimately get weighted. And so, yeah, it's possible for her to like need some things when the priest dies because, she's lost part of her faith. But if her son dies, it overrides everything else, basically.
Yeah.
So, that quest like basically no longer becomes relevant to her.
I like that.
Nice.
Yeah, those are those kind of things that you just kind of. I don't know how much you planned for when you started working on the project with those kind of relationships, but definitely something you need to have in there if you're going to have this living village.
Right, and the counterbalance to that is it's only 24 people, and 24 is like already plenty for me to deal with.
Yeah,
but it's not an Elder Scrolls situation, like.
Yeah.
I'm not keeping track of, tens of thousands of NPCs trying to respond to what's going on in the world. It's 24, and it's 24 and really quickly into the game 23 and then 22, so
Yeah.
I don't have to keep track of so many of them.
I really do like that aspect of the game, just because it allows for so much possibility. Just from a creative standpoint, that's always one of those things that gets me. I like things that are very creative, where someone really took some thought into what was going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. It's something that is definitely the core focus here, and something that I've really put a lot of work into. But I think it's going to pay off.
Yeah. I like how this right here with the Alec, when you talk to him, it's like I've lost 2 of my friends, and I'm not interested in making new ones. But you have to prove to him that you're capable of a leader as one character and as smart as the other one, and maybe you can be friends.
Yeah,
So
and to give you a sense, like, he was originally when you spoke with him in the first playthrough, he was in a different house. He was the one that gave you the Imp Oil quest. But, he's gone through a lot in this version of the demo, so he's instead at the inn. Like, he's not working anymore. And that can become a problem for the town because he's the alchemist. At the same time, you saw the city guardsman was at the bar, basically. In certain, depending on who dies in your demo, he can be out patrolling. He can be standing guard at Cecilia's house because nobody else is there. So what he's doing is changing.
I like that, even just for little behavioral things like that for the characters. Like, just in and of itself gives it a lot of variety of.
Right, like sometimes these things
aspects
don't affect the game, and it's just kind of flavor, and that's fun. Like, that's important,
Miguel, you've been playing for what, about 30 minutes now?
I think
Something
so,
like that?
yeah.
Maybe a little more than that.
About an hour,
'cause
maybe?
I haven't really been paying attention to the time.
Yeah, about an hour or so.
Okay, what do you think thus far?
Good.
Ringing endorsement.
Miguel's meant a few words.
I was hoping for like a more kind of like something closer to not a review per se, but just a discussion of experiences. And he's like, can't talk, sliding puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get used to this after you get used to this after a while, especially when you're working with Miguel. So it's like,
Oh, this looks like a sliding puzzle from the original demo. Despite actually sliding from the original demo. I know how to go through this one.
This section.
My friend had a lot of fun as I was going through this. He's like, oh, no, don't turn left now, turn left. No. He's telling me all the different, like, dude, I've done this before. He's like, no, I know you have, but still, like,
Whee!
like, if you want to sit down and play, because by all means, sit down and play. Check out my friend's game.
That's actually my favorite part of the. It looks like you already hit the switch, and it's kind of like a one-time thing. But that's like my favorite part of all the conventions too, is when people bring friends, because then like the friends start yelling at them is to like, no, you're doing this all wrong. That's the best way to play a puzzle game. It's
Yeah. Yeah, plus, you're no, do a left, slide left. As I'm yelling out commands, and then Miguel falls off the edge.
Nope.
No, I wasn't commanding you, Miguel. I wasn't telling you to slide left. I was using that as a example of things I was being yelled at, and I was like, I will step away from my keyboard, you can play. I was showing it to you anyways, you technically should be playing it, not me playing it for you. I'll have to tell them that the new version is out. But it's definitely one of those things where you've done something good with the puzzles when you have your armchair puzzle helper yelling at you the entire time.
Yes.
I'm like, no, do this. And while that can get a little bit aggravating, it's definitely kind of fun just to see those reactions. And I'm sure there's people watching right now. We're like, no, Miguel, you're supposed to do this and this and this. I like watching Miguel try and solve this. It's fun.
It's definitely the best way to play it. Oh, Savage Helios has it figured. Nope. Savage Helios is telling you the cheat code.
Oh, that is brilliant. That might be the quote of the night. I need to start writing those down when I make my jokes about the quote of the night. I still think my favorite Miguel line is, "I'm not paying for that convenience."
That's the best line ever.
It really is.
And the worst part is, like, we had a discussion like off stream, just about his stolen knife, and it's just like we were just talking about that. We're like, hey, you know, what about the convenience? Like, people just don't want to pay for the convenience, and it's just like when he said it, was like all I can think of was like, Miguel's that asshole that would steal the knife.
Miguel would not steal a knife.
No, not me.
Not from me, because he knows I'd cut him. There you go. Yay! And there was much rejoicing.
And the villagers rejoiced.
So this is one
Unless
of
you
those,
don't complete the next sliding puzzle, then you're doomed. Because time will run out and someone's gonna die regardless. But
Right. So this is the quest we were talking about earlier, which is the Bernadette's quest, where she asks you to go find the ghost. And this ghost will just like chat at you. And there are a handful of them throughout the cave, and they'll give you kind of different perspective on a little bit of the history of what's been going on.
I like that, just for adding more of the history, and knowing that it's more than just the one ghost there also kind of makes it really interesting, because I just figured it was just gonna be do the one ghost quest, not, you know, oh, now you got to floor 2, now you can do the next ghost quest.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and for each
and they're
floor,
actually like sometimes you have to backtrack to find their graves because of the randomization. So you kind of have to carry maybe a few ghosts with you at the same time. And those, where are you going, buddy?
I don't know anymore.
It's done. It's going home. But sometimes the ghosts will also have conversations with each other if you've got several of them following you at a time.
Oh, I didn't know you'd planned out anything like that.
Yeah, those are already in the game. Like the ice cave is pretty much done at this point. Like it's a wrap. And it's just focused now on the mechanics are in place for the other areas, but the art is not. So that's yeah. Once you leave the ice cave, it's a little like Microsoft Painty.
It sounds like you've gotten fairly far into the game at this point, then, if that's the case. I mean, other than the art assets.
Yeah, and also, for my purposes, most of the puzzles just right now have one option besides the ice cave, and I did it for the ice cave so I could make sure that the randomization worked and all that stuff. But now that I have the random puzzle generator, I was like, let's just get through this. So I need to add all of those puzzles as well.
Yeah. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what the later floors look like.
So the artist I'm working with, her name is Becca Bear. She's amazing. I've never met her, but we have like this great working relationship. She's actually out in Colorado, and she, yeah, exactly. That's the DLC. That's
Solve all the puzzles. Keep going.
Yeah, just a single cheat code, 99 cents. And she started to like concept out some of the other areas, and they're pretty fun looking right now.
I'm actually looking forward to seeing some of that stuff. Because I like the design of everything, and I really like the general look.
The season pass. I don't know what the season pass includes, but I do know it's $5.99 a month. I can't promise any content though.
That's cheaper than Evolve right now. Hi-oh!
Exactly.
The day the stranger
Awesome.
came
So you
to-
guys actually saw
If you could
all
find a way through
the
the blizzard,
four
maybe
major paths in the
storm
demo,
was-
which
the
are
stranger was
the Saving Sandra's Son, the Ghost Quest, the Imp Cave, and the Burning House.
Awesome.
So you've gotten the folk. There's tiny little things that change depending on who dies, but those, for the purposes of the demo, just to kind of give you a broad scope of where this could be, you've seen it all.
All right, that's cool.
Sorry, just reading the.
Savage, it's dirt cheap, especially for all of the wonderful, let's say, features you're gonna get. I don't.
I don't know that Miguel was capable of getting to the four main routes. I mean, granted, one was triggered by just using the option to just activate it.
Right.
But the fact that we got through all of them is kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, and so you can see that the demo's pretty short, but ultimately there's the randomness has a lot of impact, and you're still seeing new things. Like right now, Dorothea's out fixing the lights, so she's gonna go around and patrol and like turn them on and stuff. And Attell was actually guarding the house, so you can't get inside that left house in this playthrough, which is something you hadn't seen before. So there's a lot of these like little things that are more flavory, as you keep playing. So.
I think we lost you back there. Can you repeat what you just said?
Oh, there's just like a lot of these little more flavor elements to the game as you keep playing. So even though you've seen the four big branches, there's still tiny little things like Attell guarding the house or Dorothea patrolling and fixing the street lights and those kinds of people participating in the town. So
Got it. In all seriousness, let me talk a little bit about what do you hope this to do in the future with the game? Like, not only I wouldn't want to say a DLC, but in a future update, what would you like to have in the game eventually?
yeah, I mean it's funny. It's a question that comes up all the time now, and it's just, I think, where the industry is, right? Like, it's very rare that somebody just like walks in, drops a game, and leaves anymore. And it's something that I've thought a lot about with Vidar. I can't imagine there being like a lot of DLC behind it, but the game is ripe for particularly expanding the dungeon. I mean, it's supremely easy to continue to add more random choices to the dungeon. And so that's something that I can easily see becoming like a downloadable feature or something, or just in a patch. Also adding, more like finding. So right now, like, I have the general path for all 24 NPCs. I know what their quests are. I know what the conditions are for those things. But every so often I find like a nice little synergy where it's like, oh, person A did this and person B did this and person C did this. I want to do something with that. And continuing to see those and look for those is something that I would want to be able to add to the game later too.
All right.
Yeah, those for me are kind of like the two big ticket items, I guess. That's a fun example, just because you had already done this quest, but the rocks and the arrows are laid out differently now.
Yep.
So you can kind of start to see that.
Well, the reason why I asked is because I'm not saying the game is bare bones, but I am saying it's if you do have like a vision beyond the completed game that you're proposing so far.
Yeah, I think that it's something that I wanted to. I went into this project and said, I'm going to... Honestly, I went into this project thinking, I want to make a game in a month. A year and a half later... Savage Helios, there has to be a sequel. Like, there's definitely Vidar 2. The problem is that everyone dies in the first game, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to reuse any of the stuff.
Well, what's kind of cool is that if you do establish this ancient kingdom, you could really make it kind of a prequel and have it take place around that ancient kingdom and work with some of the lore you've built from there. And you probably could use some of the same assets, because I'm sure there's some way to connect that into the old kingdom.
Yeah, it's something,
You'd have to create a whole new cast of characters and all that, but
right. If it's funny, if anything, I would go backwards with this game. I wouldn't, like chronologically, I wouldn't go forward. It's something that I've toyed with that idea. I don't know that I would want it to be like a similar game. I would maybe set it in the same universe, but make it a match 3 or a tower defense or but I wanted to answer the question. I wanted to keep this smaller in scope, and so I had really gone into this stripped down. Vidar, everyone dies in the sequel too. Perfect.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't think that there's gonna be like a huge new feature that gets added like later down the road. I had the core concept for the game for a while, and I think it's gonna stay that way. Hopefully, the last thing that this needs is more scope creep.
Well, here's another interesting, just from this perspective, from far off in the future. What other styles of games have you been interested in wanting to make?
All right. So I have this idea. I want to make basically like a MUD, like a text-based, like experience or whatever RPG, with but multiplayer. I've like written the story out in my head and have this idea of like vaguely basing it on Macbeth. It's complicated. And every time I like explain this to my husband, he's like, okay, whatever. But that I want to continue to play with narrative. That's the more important thing to me, is rather than staying in in the style of puzzle games or the style of RPG or anything like that. What's really just important to me is experimenting with narrative in video games. And as long as I can keep doing that, I'll figure out what style is appropriate later.
Yeah. But I like the fact that you're very story first more than focusing on the genre.
I'm an only child, and I think that makes such a difference. Like I really think it does, because like I played games by myself, growing up, and so the story was way more important. Like I never got into like a lot of fighting games or a lot, like some like more multiplayer games that are more action heavy or more mechanics heavy. It wasn't a focus because that like I would just play with friends. I wouldn't play, and by and large I'd be playing myself. So a lot of single player games that were story driven.
My older brother, who always talked on the show, is a stepbrother, so I grew up to about the age of 8 or 9 thereabouts by myself. So I was always playing by myself with my toys, which is probably why I've been driven to be a writer as an adult. I mean, Dad and my mom reading books to me like every single night. But when I got together with my brother, what I quickly learned is that he was just better at me at any competitive game. And I was very lucky that I had a brother who was willing to find games that are more cooperative. And so for me, competitive gaming was never that good of a thing, because when you're the younger brother and getting beaten every time, it doesn't motivate you to keep playing. It motivates you to just go, I'll just watch you play the computer.
Right.
Because as an only child, I didn't have to compete with anyone. So as soon as I had to compete with someone and I lost all the time, it wasn't fun for me.
Right. It's suddenly no longer fun.
Yeah. But co-oping was always fun, because then if my brother did something cool or I did something cool, you have someone right next to you go like, dude, did you see that when you did that thing? Right. And I always liked that experience from it. But for me, story was always more important. In fact, I got my older brother into RPGs because he was watching over my shoulder and be like, oh, cool, I didn't know you could do that kind of spell that does that. When do you get that? I'm like, well, you got to get to like level 15. So how many monsters do you have to kill to do that? I'm like, well, I mean, it's easier if you go further in the game. He's like, no, you got to go.
I think
my plan is to take the next 2 hours and get this spell.
I am stuck in a loop where I cannot get him out.
Oh my god, you are stuck in a loop that you can't get him out. What the hell?
There's no way to pull him out. Even though he dies at the end of this.
There's totally a way, and I'm not telling you what the answer is, but there's totally a way.
Okay, so it isn't a glitch at least.
Well, I'm trying to figure it out, but I can't seem to get it.
if you just do this loop 18 more times, something will change.
This, honestly, Miguel playing was the best choice. His player commentary isn't all that great, but just the things he's ended up doing in while playing have been awesome.
Savage, I think that's totally right. I think it is just an excuse.
Well, I did eventually get good at fighting games. I will put that in. That was the one my brother was capable of getting me into, honestly, because one, he showed me the tricks, and then two, by the time I started to be able to play those games, I'd gotten old enough to where I could compete with my brother. Street Fighter really helped because there were just so many characters, and you get your characters eventually. So we both had our good characters, and then as a way of shaking it up, is we made a rule of once you win with a certain character, you can't use that character again until you lose. It was kind of that kind. We always put on some sort of caveat like that. Or
you guys give yourselves potential handicaps.
Yep. And that was the way to force us to not only learn the other characters, but also if one of us was dominating too much, you'd get a handicap and another handicap and another handicap, and eventually you'd lose. So that was all my brother being awesome. Because if it wasn't,
I don't know.
I'd have quit on Street Fighter 2. Like that would have been my not my first fighting game. His first fighting game was Fatal Fury, but that would have been my second one, and that would have been my probably last one. Like I played Fatal Fury in the arcades, I played Street Fighter 2 at home, and that probably would have just been the end of it for me if my brother hadn't kind of said, no. Use your best character. I'll use, E Honda. I'm not that good at E Honda. And then so I beat him with E Honda. He's like, all right, so now you can't use him again. You have to use someone else. Meanwhile, I'll go and switch up to someone else. And we'll just keep switching up. And if you keep winning, we'll keep adding restrictions. But if I start winning, we'll add restrictions on me. And that was my brother being awesome is basically what that was. And that's why I got into those. That's why, I'm a really good King of Fighters player. It's one of the reasons I'm a good Soul Calibur player. And things like that. And when my brother left, then eventually one of my close friends was also in that category. In fact, we got to the point in Soul Calibur where we would do the Soul Calibur 2 or Soul Calibur 3 out loud for this, where you could have a stack of 8 characters or something like that. And we would just on random for both of us as a way of challenging ourselves and improving our abilities. And of course, inevitably, we get the characters we're the least good with. It's like, oh, good. There's Raphael and there's a Sophitia right at the bottom of my list. My first 6 characters I suck with. Let's go. Or you'd say the same thing, except for it'd be his characters he was better with near the bottom of his list. Or my favorite one when we would do that with Soul Calibur was the first character you get was a character my friend was really good with. And it would be this challenge, because if he's like, okay, if I lose this character, the other 3 or 4, however many it is on your little list, he's like, I can't play any of them for crap. So it was a challenge mode of he has to beat all my guys on 1 life bar.
Oh, God.
And if he lost that, he knew I would be able to take him. And so I was very lucky that between my stepbrother and then one of my close friends, I became a fighting game fan. Otherwise, I wouldn't play those. I'd say if I had more friends who were into shooters, I probably would have gotten into shooters for that purpose. But I had a couple friends around the Quake 2, Quake 3, around that era, and I picked up Quake 3. I played the first 3 Quake games because of those friends, but it just never the competitive for it. It's so much. You have to know where the weapons appear. You got to know where the spawn points are, and it just always drove me crazy. Except for Team Fortress. I liked Team Fortress because, again, there's that cooperative aspect where I know I got a few other guys having my back, and I don't necessarily need to run. When you play something like Quake or Unreal, there's always that one jerk who has the sniper rifle who just clears the map. And that always drove me crazy, and it was usually one of my friends. When you could do a team thing, it didn't bother me as much because I always had that friend who was the good sniper, and I was like, I'm on that guy's team because I don't like running into the battlefield and immediately getting killed. And so for me, when it came to shooters, if we ever did something team-based, I really enjoyed it. If we did something not team-based, I did not. Because
Right.
not team-based, I just get slaughtered.
Right. Yeah, no, I
Because all
can't.
my friends knew where the rocket launchers and sniper rifles and plasma guns and whatever were located, and I didn't know where anything was. So by the time I found something, I just get hit in the head and dead. And okay, like till I spawn, and now I know where one gun is. But now everyone knows I know where that one gun is. So
Right.
great. But when it came to Team Fortress, I could play as a medic or an engineer
Oh,
and
this
have
again.
a lot of fun just doing that.
Time to run around 18 times in the same formation of circles.
So, unfortunately, guys, I have to sign off here. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. It's been fun to talk about it, to answer some questions, and hang out.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot for
Yeah.
sharing this game with us, and hopefully your Kickstarter is successful in the next 5 days.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Like I said, I think it's gonna be a photo finish. It's not one of these easy to calls. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll definitely be posting this video on YouTube, and hopefully that can get a few more people interested as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to spread it around. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye.
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 Skype, all right. We're still on Skype, and everything's good. Good.
Yeah.
What's up?
Best
I'm here.
part it's like I don't mean to be like that guy, but I've been needing to pee for like 25 minutes now.
Well, I need to go take out the dog really quick. So
Okay. Miguel, your choice if you want to keep going.
I am going to keep going for a little while longer, but
Okay.
this is gonna be it.
Well, because right now we're at 10 o'clock Eastern and we're 7 Pacific, so you've been playing for a while. You want to go for another few minutes while Ramses and I refresh ourselves, or I refresh myself and Ramses takes care of the dog, and then we can all get back together and either go into the Zelda stream as normal or something else.
I guess we can go into the Zelda stream.
all right, sounds good. Alrighty then. So stay put. Miguel's gonna still keep on playing. I'm gonna take out the dog. I'm pretty sure by a certain amount of time, since he's got pee like a thoroughbred. Jared's gonna be back. So, and then after that, we're gonna play some Zelda.
Right now, I'm just gonna fail this thing because it's kind of gets me. It doesn't work.
It doesn't. He just
No,
left it like
it's not. I know.
left this stuff. Left this in the cold. What the hell?
This time I know how to solve. This one, there's actually a solution that I can get to.
All right. You keep at it. I'll be back. I'll be back. I gotta take out the doggy and I'll be back. Okay.
Alrighty. Alright, so I need to put the green arrow to go up. Alright, let's see here. We're gonna be going into Zelda, Helios. We shall, after I finish this, we're gonna be closing the stream as I set up to play Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and continue our Zelda run.
Alright, I'm refreshing my tea because, like we said, this is a tea-themed podcast now.
Yep.
Oh wait, that was before the show even started, so no one heard me say the tea-themed podcast joke.
Well, I solved that puzzle. Which sadly, we already know what the end is.
Somebody dies.
Yep.
I go normally that should be like my, but it's just it's the actual answer.
Alright. So that was it for Vidar. Time to go through, I guess, some purple NASCAR real quick. Yeah, that's it for Vidar. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it for Vidar. We thank you all for joining us. We thank Dean, who is head lead of the Vidar the game development and story base and everything. We thank him for joining us, commenting on the game and all the different scenarios that we have encountered. Please, please, please visit his Kickstarter page and donate. There's only a few days left of it, and if you're watching this on our YouTube page, hopefully you donated on time. If not, we all hope you enjoyed this video. You can follow Dean and Vidar the Game on Twitter at Vidar the Game. You should see it scrolling down underneath. Also, you can go to the webpage www.vidarthegame.com. And as always, follow us and favorite everything that you see on Twitch and Twitter. Our Twitch is twitch.tv/secretstage. Our YouTube is youtube.com/secretstage games. Follow us on Twitter at SR_secretstage. And you can also follow us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/secretstage games. That will be it for the most part. Thank you for watching, and hold tight, hold still. We will be back with Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3 Heart and No Battle Z Target Challenge.
Because you're insane. Can't solve a sliding puzzle, but you can get through a fancy targeting in Ocarina of Time.